Members, we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the panel on development. The first agenda item is information papers issued since the last meeting. The relevant papers are set out in the agenda. The second agenda item is items for discussion at the next meeting. LC paper number CB brackets 1110/2026 brackets 01 list of outstanding items for discussion. Now, the next meeting will be held at 2:30 p.m. on the relevant day. The administration proposes to discuss two items. One, dedicated legislation to accelerate the development of the Northern Metropolis. And two, propose a deployment of the existing administrative officer staff grade B1 post in the Development Bureau Planning and Lands Branch to the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office, and deployment of the existing time-limited supernumerary administrative officer staff grade B post in the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office to the Development Bureau Planning and Lands Branch. B, creation of one time-limited supernumerary administrative officer staff grade C post in the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office of the Development Bureau Planning and Lands Branch. C, retention of one time-limited supernumerary chief estate surveyor post in the Lands Department. And D, retention of two time-limited supernumerary chief engineer posts in the Civil Engineering and Development Department. Do members agree to discuss the two items at the next meeting? If there are no objections, we shall discuss the two items. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Proposal to set up the subcommittee on matters relating to the development of the Northern Metropolis under the panel. Mr. Kenneth FOK wrote a letter on 6th of February proposing to set up the relevant subcommittee. Perhaps I'll ask Mr. Kenneth FOK to brief members on the proposal. Thank you, Chair. I wrote to the Secretariat to propose to set up the subcommittee. I believe members know how important it is. Actually, in the last term, we already have a subcommittee set up for the development of Northern Metropolis. We should continue such work. I think this is very important. And as the chairman said earlier, on 6th of February, I wrote to the House Committee proposing to set up the relevant subcommittee under the House Committee. But having heard feedback, I believe it would be better to set up the subcommittee under the panel on development because we can have more focused discussions and we can raise targeted suggestions. I believe even with the subcommittee set up under the panel, non-panel members can still join the subcommittee. So if we get to topics outside of the purview of the Development Bureau, representatives from other bureaus and departments can also attend the relevant meetings. So this is my proposal. I hope members will support my proposal, and I hope that we can commence the work of the subcommittee as soon as possible if the subcommittee is set up. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. The House Committee Chairman has already made an instruction that it is only after all panels have discussed work plans for the coming year the House Committee would consider proposals to set up policy subcommittees under the House Committee or panels, as well as determine the order of subcommittees commencing work. Also, for members' reference, we need to have at least half of the membership of the panel joining the relevant subcommittee. We also allow non-panel members to join. If members have no objections, we can have the House Committee follow up on this. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item number 4, flexible land development strategies and streamlining of relevant control procedures. I will ask the representatives of the administration to come inside the conference room now. I believe the Undersecretary will give a brief presentation, and then after that, I will open the floor to members for questions. Not right now.
All
right, I would now ask the Undersecretary to give a presentation. I will give an introduction. We will brief members on how we can speed up the development of the Northern Metropolis. Ms. Pak Fen-yung will give a detailed presentation in due course. I will just give an introduction. We do want to develop industries in the Northern Metropolis. So in terms of land development strategy, land grant model, as well as payment of land premiums, we have some new measures to encourage enterprises to get financing or have more cash flows so that they can set up operations in the Northern Metropolis. We may extend the arrangements to other locations in Hong Kong in future. We will give more details in due course. If they want to set up operations in Northern Metropolis, they would have to construct things in the Northern Metropolis. So we are also doing work in this regard. We have new arrangements, a new mechanism, so that for planning lands or building plan applications, before we do not have specific milestones. Now we have a timeline as well as KPIs for departmental work. We also have an internal monitoring mechanism so that on a working level, issues cannot be resolved. The issues would have to be escalated. If necessary, it can be escalated to a high-level coordination committee of the Bureau. We're not replacing the approval powers of the relevant departments, but we have observed before sometimes demands were raised by departmental representatives that applicants cannot meet, and there are some inconsistencies. We hope that with a top-level design and group thinking, we can rationalize our requirements and perhaps provide facilitation to applicants to meet requirements. Let me emphasize this. We will not sacrifice or compromise on building safety or quality requirements. It's just that we want to put in place a timeline, KPIs, and a mechanism where there can be high-level intervention as soon as needed, so that we can have a more efficient model. I'll now ask Ms. Pak Fen-yung to give a presentation. Thank you. I will give a PowerPoint presentation. First, on flexible land development strategies, and 2, on streamlining control procedures, as the Undersecretary said. Let me give some background information first. The Development Bureau is committed to streamlining some development control procedures. In 2018, we already set up the steering group on streamlining development control, which is chaired by the Undersecretary. It has expedited administrative procedures. We also set up a joint subcommittee under the Land and Development Advisory Committee consisting of representatives from professional bodies and industry representatives to provide targeted solutions. Over the past 3 years, we had different measures to streamline statutory and administrative procedures. In 2023, we had 6 pieces of legislation passed by the LegCo that would cover planning amendments, reclamation, road and railway works related legislation. Say for the development of the Northern Metropolis, we have greatly reduced the time needed to turn primitive land into spade-ready sites from 13 years to 7 years now. We have also streamlined application processes for building plan applications as well as land resumption checking. For example, I will now talk about specifically some flexible land development strategies to expedite development as well as enhance market participation in different projects, especially in the development of the Northern Metropolis. Let me talk about some specific measures. One is in situ land exchange. Some members are more familiar with this, but because some members may not be familiar with the arrangements, I will give some brief information. So in the Northern Metropolis, half of the land is government land and half of the land is private land. So we have many developers or landowners owning land in the Northern Metropolis. Before we develop a new development area, we will first have to resume private land. We then have to have the CEDD do site formation works, and then we'll allocate land by selling the piece of land or allocating it to other uses. Landowners will have to surrender their land to the government. The government will accordingly pay compensation to them. But that means landowners cannot participate in the development of the land in the area. And the government would have to do the different processes, site formation and land allocation. It would take quite some time. With in situ land exchange, if a landowner owns a piece of private land in the area and they can work with the government's plan, for example, for a piece of land is supposed to be used for private housing development, they're willing to meet that and they're willing to pay premiums. And we can do in situ land exchange, allowing the developer or the landowner to develop, say, as I said earlier, a private housing development. It does not require the government to resume land and or the government to form the land. It also allows the government to receive premiums early on. It is a win-win situation. And we have applied in situ land exchange arrangements not just to residential or commercial developments, but also for industrial development. In the Northern Metropolis, we have completed 6 applications so far. It provides approximately 9,000 housing units. So we have essentially expedited supply of housing through this. We will also implement large-scale land disposal in the Northern Metropolis. Before, we would sell lots one by one, but we will now sell lots in batches. That would include some lots for public facilities, so developers can develop the piece of land with large-scale land disposal for better planning. We now have 3 pilot locations in Hon KWOK, Santin Technopole, and Fanling North. Last year, we also gauged market feedback on large-scale land disposal arrangements. For example, land use requirements, or works requirements. We have got really good feedback. At the end of last year, for Hon KWOK, we already had the 2 envelope tendering commenced. We have incorporated market feedback. We have included an additional residential lot. We have reduced a road from the piece of land to really make the lot more attractive. It can also alleviate burden on developers in terms of cash flow. And we do take an industrial-oriented approach, with 30% being accorded to price. 70% of the scoring criteria would be on non-pricing criteria. We will have regard to different sectors, for example, whether the enterprise is top-notch enterprise, the development speed, the scale of investment, employment opportunities they will provide. We have 3 residential lots and 3 industrial lots within Hon KWOK, and we will ask at least one industrial lot to be operated by the bidder. And if the developer chooses to develop and operate other lots as well, they will be given a higher score. We want to make use of large-scale land disposal in an industrial-oriented approach so as to boost an industry chain in Hong Kong.
Now let me talk about the measure that allow payment of premium by installment. In the past, when we sell a piece of land, we ask the winners of the bid to pay the land premium in full within 28 days from the tender award. Under a new arrangement, the winner of the tender will be asked to pay no less than 25% of the land premium within 28 days from the tender award, and they only have to pay the remaining 75% within the following 3 years. No interest will be charged. This is to make it more convenient for the developers and alleviate the cash flow pressure of them. This allows them to invest in the lot better. We also allow landowners to surrender private land to offset the land premium payable. That applies to large-scale land disposal and in-situ land exchange. As I said, 50% of the land in the Northern Metropolis belong to the government, the rest belong to private developers. For lands within the Northern Metropolis that has been authorized by Chief Executive and Council for resumption, and for land that has already been resumed pending release of ex gratia allowances, they can be surrendered to the government by the developers to offset the land premium payable by them. Under large-scale land disposal and under in-situ land exchange. This improves the developers' cash flow and alleviate their financial pressure. We now only accept the surrender of agricultural land, and they can only be used to offset land premium payable for in-situ land exchange or large-scale land disposal, as I mentioned. We're also going to pilot the phased development approach. We have drawn on the experience of 1.5 level development in Qianhai on the mainland. It means that the government already have long-term plan for a piece of land, but before large-scale development, the government pilot low-density facilities to attract footfall first, to warm up that piece of land before more facilities are built. And long-term plan be implemented? We will identify some commercial sites in the town center of Hon KWOK as pilot sites. The Hon KWOK station of Tuma Line will be commissioned in 2032, and the Shanghai Hon KWOK railway will be commissioned in 2030. We will build temporary facilities to attract footfall and to have more enterprises establish presence there to warm up that piece of land for its long-term development. The measures that I'm going to talk about apply not just to the Northern Metropolis but the entire territory. First, long-term government tenancies. In the past, the short-term tenancies allow for a 7-year of rental in the first signing of the contract, and the rentees have to renew the contract every quarter. However, due to substantial investment committed by the rentees, we are of the view that we should be able to offer a long-term tenancies for rentees. That's what we refer to as 7+7+7. Tenants may renew the tenancy twice at most after the first tenancy term. This allows for long-term planning. The measure will be applicable territory-wide and rolled out in the first quarter of this year. The next measure that we have is the pay for what you build pilot scheme. The scheme will last 3 years, and this applied to non-residential development. For residential developments, usually the developers will exhaust the maximum GFA. So this pilot scheme will not apply to that. Lease modifications and land exchanges for non-residential development, mainly commercial and industrial sites, will be covered. For landowners, when they apply for lease modifications, the lands department will charge them a land premium based on the maximum gross floor area. And they will also take into account the best use or the preferred use. However, the landowners may be deterred from building on this piece of land because sometimes the plot ratio of that piece of land could be as high as 12. They only intend to use 6. The cost would be too high for them in terms of land premium. Now, under the pay for what you build pilot scheme, we allow for a lower land premium. However, we don't want the GFA build to be too small. That's why we ask the developers to build at least 60% of the maximum GFA. And we allow the landowner 10 years' time to decide whether or not they want to develop the remaining 40% of the GFA. If they don't indicate whether they want to develop the remaining 40% within the 10 years' time, then the government may, depending on the demand in the local district, redeploy the GFA allowed for infrastructures such as water pipes to other lots. We believe that 10 years' time is good enough for developers to decide whether they want to expand the development. We also have alienation restriction or assignment restriction. In other words, the landowner cannot sell the remaining 40% of the GFA. If there are too many landowners within the same piece of land, it will make it more complicated. And if they want to lift the assignment restrictions, they can apply to the lands department. Another focus of our paper is how we streamline the approval process. In last year's policy address, it is mentioned that we were going to establish a Northern Metropolis Project Supervision Office. It is led by the Permanent Secretary for Development, Planning and Lands. And as I said, in 2018, we have another steering group that is chaired by the Undersecretary for Development, and that steering group will be responsible for non-Northern Metropolis projects. In mid-January, we issued a general circular on new measures that cover large-scale residential developments with 500 flats or more, commercial developments with GFA of 100,000 square meters or more, industry-related developments, and other projects with strategic significance or with policy support. To put it simply, the circular covers timeline on different areas and under what circumstances would the projects or issues would have to be escalated. And cases unresolved by departments or challenging cases brought by developers for assistance will be escalated to the newly established Northern Metropolis Project Supervision Office when necessary. For private development projects, if consensus cannot be reached, the new mechanism will allow us to intervene early. And sometimes we may be able to expedite Northern Metropolis projects. The NMCO has been established and we meet every month, and the steering group will meet every quarter to look into different projects. Lastly, in July 2024, we issued a general circular on how we should adopt a facilitating and collaborative mindset. Hopefully, departments will introduce good practice into the approval procedures of various projects. Many policy-making bureaus and departments have implemented some new measures that amount to 70 as at the third quarter of 2025. And we strive to further implement around 30 new measures within this year. We will proactively consult the trade as usual in the process. That's all from our presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Secretary and Undersecretary. Thank you. There are 15 members who have pressed the button. I'll read out their names. Mr. Kenneth Lau, Ms. Christine Fong, Mr. Chong Ho-fong, Ms. Michelle Tang, Mr. Kenneth Fok, Mr. Lam Chen-sing, Mr. Stanley Ng, Mr. Lee Chen-kan, Mr. Augustine Wong, Mr. Lau Kai-kong, Mr. Yu Ming, Ms. KWOK Fu-yung, Mr. Tam Chun Kwok, Mr. Aaron Bok, and Ms. Julia Lau. Each member have 5 minutes, including question and answer. I will be strict with time management. If you have exhausted your time assigned, I will ask the administration to note your question.
Mr. Kenneth Lau. Thank you, Chair. I would first like to declare my family and I have land in the Northern Metropolis. I welcome the submission of the paper by the administration In the past few years, the administration expedited land supply for the development of Northern Metropolis. They have adopted innovative thinking, such as arrangements for in-situ land exchange as well as large-scale land disposal. It really shows the government's determination to relax barriers and restrictions and respond to market demand. Now, with the fifth paragraph, it talked about how in-situ land exchange will be extended to cover land apart from commercial and residential land. It will definitely help consolidate private land resources to expedite development. We will have some industrial and maybe INT land covered. The pricing model may be different from traditional lots. Will the administration formulate a set of clear and trusted guidelines and calculation methods and make clear such information to the public? In situ land exchange, how will the government cater to the considerations of different stakeholders and the interests of minor landowners in the vicinity to make the process of land resumption and land exchange more harmonious? For the smaller stakeholders that cannot take part in situ land exchange, how can you make sure the compensation they receive will be fair compared to the land exchange arrangements granted to larger developers? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lau, for your question. I would say the land exchange and compensation arrangements have all along been fair and transparent. For in-situ land exchange, the relevant rules are included in the Lands Department's practice note, and it is available online. The rules and requirements are made very clear when we promulgated relevant policy. For residential lots, for land exchange, it has to be at least 4,000 square meters in size. The condition cannot be too bad. For commercial developments, if one has already resumed 90% of private ownership, the remaining can be done by the government. Of course, the developer would also have to construct some public facilities. As for land premium, we also have standard rates for residential and commercial lots. For other uses, we would need to really have regard to the nature. It may not be appropriate for us to have standard rates, but I think there is room for discussion. As for compensation to minority owners, for agricultural land, we have standard pricing for acquisition, and we will actually adopt the highest tier for resumption. And if minority owners are interested, they can form a larger lot to take part in land exchange. Thank you. Christine Fong. Thank you, Chair. The Northern Metropolis will be the new engine for growth of the city. We really need to attach great importance to it, and we should do so also to align with the National 15 5-year plan. The Development Bureau's flexible land development strategies, such as in-situ land exchange, large-scale land disposal, I welcome these different arrangements. The administration talked about earlier only a lot that exceeds 4,000 square meters in size can be resumed. I think landowners with smaller land, it is not easy for them to take part in the process. We have these smaller landowners in the new territories. For example, for Hiram's Highway, when we had land resumption, they are only paid Tier C compensation. So I want to clarify this with the administration. On flexible land development, the Undersecretary or the Deputy Secretary talked about how there may be longer term tenancies, 7+7+7. So I want to ask, apart from actually having themselves occupy land, they are probably other uses such as drone applications or high-tech facilities that can really promote investment and upgrading and transformation. But they will need to construct some facilities. Will you be able to relax the relevant restrictions? Undersecretary, let me first clarify something. For land resumption, there is no cap or there is no threshold in terms of area. But for land exchange, we do, because with new development areas, we want to have comprehensive planning. We don't want the lots to be too fragmented. We do not want a small lot that would hurt the development potential of larger lots, which is why after studying the different options, we consider 4,000 square meters to be an appropriate size. We want to offer flexibility to owners, but we do not want to compromise on comprehensive planning. As for compensation for land resumption, we have ex gratia allowance. Of course, you can ask for statutory compensation, but we actually have for new development areas, we have the highest pricing. There are only 2 tiers in pricing, and for agricultural land, we have this higher pricing, and we review the level of compensation every 6 months. We believe industries have different demands, so we believe in facilitation. We should try to just expedite approval processes and be more flexible in our planning requirements. And we talked about how we would have the Northern Metropolis Project Supervision Office to help industries with that. Thank you, Mr. Chang Ho-feng. Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions. I'll be brief. We often have very clear understanding of what streets are in Yulong, what streets are in Tuen Mun, but we do not have clear boundaries for the Northern Metropolis. And actually, many owners in Northwestern Territories, new territories, want to know whether they are eligible for land exchange. I hope that the Bureau can provide clearer information, for example, lot numbers, so that landowners know whether they're eligible. Also, for pay for what you build, right now you allow for developers to do 60% of the part first to basically test the waters and alleviate cash flow pressures on them. I do support this, but then with district planning, you have to consider the population. You have to consider different facilities, libraries, markets. You have to consider the roads. You can't really divide this by percentage. So you can give developers 10 years. If a developer completes the 60%, the remaining 40%, people may not want to pick up this half-baked good. So that can be a problem. Now, with land resumption, many Northwestern landowners want to have the notification made as soon as possible, and sometimes they do not see the notices fixed in certain locations. So can you have, say, banners posted at land to be resumed so that they can see that clearly? And they want to know early on, because sometimes they may have plans for fish rearing, and if you tell them too late, they will lose everything. Undersecretary, thank you, Mr. Chong, for your comments. We try to notify affected residents or landowners as soon as possible. Posting banners is one thing, and we also try to liaise with affected ones as soon as possible to mitigate the impact or minimize the impact cost to them. As for pay for what you build, it does not apply to residential lots, because one does not have to monitor the market situation essentially. We want them to really follow our plans as much as possible. As for commercial developments, and as the member said, transportation is very important. And if the developer only completes 60% of the work and they're not willing to go on with the remaining 40%, let me say this. The government has the initiative to allocate the remaining works to those who are interested and those who are probably already established in the area. And as I said earlier, there are reviews, and we would review from time to time infrastructural capacity or the overall development potential of the area to see if we can include any new uses. We adopt district boundaries of the district councils, and every time before a land exchange exercise, we'll put relevant information on the lands department's website. If owners are not clear about this, they can always reach out to us or reach out to our outreach teams. If members receive any proposals, please refer to us. Excuse me, your time is up. We'll move on. Ms. Michelle Tang. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Development Bureau, for giving such a detailed presentation. The PPA all along supports development of industries and us adopting an infrastructure-led approach to boost the economy. I think it's good that we are trying to extend short-term tenancies, but then there may be concerns that granting a 21-year tenancy may give vested interests. So I think the government needs to explain what justifications there are for granting longer-term tenancies. For some obnoxious facilities, for example, some plants, it is good that we have longer-term tenancies. The government should also provide more support by finding right locations for such operations. The government has flexibility. You can really make changes when you need to, but I hope that you can maintain fairness and clarity in approval processes. I want to now turn to the issue of Northern Metropolis Project's Supervision Office. I want to ask if you include other departments in the office. Sometimes there are some communication barriers between departments. So will you try to coordinate different departments in your work, and when will you start this mechanism? Thank you. Undersecretary, thank you, Ms. Tang. I believe it is very important to make sure we make clear our justifications. And in fact, with the policy intent, we do understand for some industries it is probably better if we adopt short-term tenancies. But then we do see some restrictions because short-term tenancies only last for 7 years. If there are no special circumstances, a new tendering exercise will be held. But we have heard some stakeholders think it is not beneficial to their upgrading or transformation, or when significant investment is needed. It is not very attractive. So we want to provide more consistency. But we will not take an across-the-board approach. For, say, car parks, for private car parking, we may not consider this. But then, say, for parking lots close to container terminals, we may adopt a longer term for tenancies. As for the office, we actually already have interdepartmental coordination with steering from the Development Bureau. And as said in the paper, say for planning applications, once we've received an application for 6 weeks and issues cannot be resolved on the working level, the case would have to be escalated to a higher level so we can really complete the process within 8 weeks. So we now have a timeline and we know when to escalate certain issues.
然之後呢，
After Mr. Zhang Ying has spoken, I will draw the line. Mr. Kenneth FOK. Thank you. I'd like to ask about the transition from 333 to 777. I'm glad to see that because that helped my industry. Many NSAs are NGOs and it's difficult for them to seek donations and sponsorship because very often the tenancy only lasts 3 years. If now we have this new 777 arrangement, that will help the industry a lot. I'd like to ask about the approval procedures. Will the planning or purposes or uses be used, and will the applicant being an NGO be an advantage? If I want to change the tenancy from 333 to 777, do I have to file another application? If, say, the applicant fulfill certain criteria, can they apply to renew the tenancy under the 777 approach? Undersecretary, let me give you an example. For NGOs under STT, they may be renting our venues for 4 or 4.5 years, some renting car parks for no longer than 7 years. For the sake of fairness, for STTs under open tender, a new tender will be initiated. We ask the departments or bureaus responsible for a certain industry to look into the tenancy arrangement of a particular piece of land. We may not open up all venues for 777. We need the departments to justify the 777 arrangement. So we talked to the departments and bureaus to look into whether such flexibility should be allowed for a particular piece of land. Well, I'm glad to see such flexibility under STT. Next, Mr. Lam Chan Singh. Thank you. It is said that the government will expedite the approval of large-scale developments. And when there's issues or unresolved cases, they can be escalated to the steering group on streamlining of development control. What kind of cases are we talking about here? Are we referring to cases that cannot be resolved despite going through all sorts of departments, such as the police, the fire services department? And will the case ultimately be escalated to the decision-making bureau, for example? Can you give us some examples of such challenging cases? Second, for large-scale development, such as commercial sites, the streamlined approval only applied to sites with GFA of 100,000 square meters or more. Should we relax the threshold so that we can apply the mechanism to smaller commercial developments? Thank you. Let me answer the second question first. We need resources to process cases, and we therefore have to accord priorities to different cases. That's why we want to first focus on large-scale developments that are more beneficial to society. For residential developments, we're talking about those with 500 flats or more. For those in the Northern Metropolis, very likely most of them will be of such scale. For commercial developments, we're talking about GFA of 100,000 square meters or more. We also cover industry-related developments. If the projects do not fall within the first three categories, we may cover that as well if they are of strategic significance or they are with policy support. So here is our mechanism. We have two-level intervention or monitoring. After receipt of the application, if within 3 months no response been received, or if we receive conflicting response from different departments, then in 3 weeks' time we ask the chief of department to intervene, and if the case has not been resolved, then the case will be escalated. If within 6 weeks the conflicting views cannot be resolved, then the case will be escalated to the bureau. Thank you. Mr. Stanley Ng. Thank you, Chairman. We all want the government to streamline process, develop land more flexibly. We all want to see results. I have a question on the pay for what you build scheme. When a developer surrender only part of a lot for the pay for what you build scheme, what about the remaining lot? Will other problems arise? Your intention may be to allow for flexibility. Will legal challenge be resulted? Undersecretary, we will be careful. Pay for what you build approach will apply to industrial land, and a developer want to change the use of the land to build a multimedia center. They will have to draw the boundary of the land, and they will have to apply to the government. They have to sign contracts with us. So the entire matter will be bound by contract. Mr. Ng also put another question. Say, for example, if the developer does not exhaust the GFA, well, that's why we put in place a time limit, that is 10 years. After 10 years, the government will be able to make a decision on how to use the remaining 40% of GFA. The GFA may be redeployed to other lots. If other lots want to make use of the redeployed lot, then they will have to apply to the town planning board to make sure that there will not be any adverse impacts on traffic or visual, for example. That lot would have to have exhausted the GFA. Mr. Lee Chan-kan. These flexible land development strategies and streamlined control procedures are great. I have some questions. Landowners may hold different lots under different companies. I think that a joint venture may be a way to go. I believe that you welcome it. On the two-envelope approach, will you make the assessment criteria transparent? Will there be too many lots focusing on the same industry? What is the details of the two-envelope approach? What if a better company come forward? How would you deal with it? And what is the decision-making process? Say, for example, will you plan for a district with 50% of biomedicine and other 50% on another industry? You said that within 10 years' time, the developer have to decide on whether or not they want to develop the remaining 40%. Why not 12 years? Why not 14 years? Will you mandate the development of youth or elderly-related facilities, or even nursery or child care centers to promote fertility? My last question, on the 1.5 level development approach, I fully support it because many places have been adopting it. Will you work with the Housing Bureau? LPH is under 2+5. After the light public housing has been demolished, will the site be turned into, say, staff hostels or other purposes? Thank you. Undersecretary. Well, on the LPH sites, I will relay your suggestion to the Housing Bureau, but those sites have the long-term purpose, actually. On your other question, well, we rolled out a elderly-friendly design last year. We set the time limit at 10 years. This is a pilot scheme. So after it, we will look into whether there is any room for adjustment. Usually, after a site is developed, it takes a few years' time for the developers to see if they want to develop or further expand the development. So the developer needs time to make the decision. We're going to adopt the two-envelope approach on the tender in the Northern Metropolis. 30% is the price, 70% is for non-premium proposal, which focus on whether leading enterprises will be introduced, the development, the speed, investment scale, and employment opportunities to be created. On the 30% of land premium weighting, well, it's actually transparent. We have a statement published on our website, so everything is clear. You asked if we have any industry in mind. We select the best enterprise to be introduced, and we want to leverage on market wisdom. That's why one of the criteria is the development of enterprise and technology park sites. Thank you.
Mr. Augustine Wong. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure the Chairman anticipated this. I need to declare an interest. I am first a member of the Joint Subcommittee mentioned earlier, and the company I serve does real estate development and has land in the Northern Metropolis. After declaring relevant interests, I would like to express my support for flexible land development strategies and streamlining of control procedures. The Bureau consulted the sector many times before, and we came up with this together. The arrangements are not perfect, but then with, for example, the pay for what you build arrangements, it really helps developers and landowners in cash flow. If you do not allow landowners or developers to sell such land, it can be difficult. So can you relax the alienation restriction? If there are other ways to allay the government's concerns, I'm sure developers are more than willing to consider them. So say if we can split 2 blocks, we can have, say, 60% and 40%, and would you allow for the 60% that is one of the blocks to be sold first? I hope that the administration can consider the cash flow pressure on developers. Undersecretary, thank you, Mr. Wong, for your comments. But let me say this, for the pay for what you build approach, we believe with our existing arrangements, it already alleviates cash flow pressure on developers. And since we launched the arrangements not long ago, I think we can wait for some time and then review the effectiveness of the arrangements. We also see for some industrial or non-residential developments, it is better to sell the units in a batch to make it more attractive. Any follow-up questions, Mr. Wong? I think you should offer a choice to landowners or developers. Of course, I understand where the government is coming from, but I hope the government can keep an open mind to offer options to developers. I believe this is the government's stance at the moment. It is not something that cannot be dealt with technically. All right, Mr. Lau Ka-kong, thank you. I'm very happy to hear in paragraphs 11 and 12 of the paper saying how the government has a 3-tier monitoring high-level intervention mechanism to expedite speed and efficiency. I hope that the Bureau can make regular announcements on the relevant cases or what bottlenecks there were in approval so that we can look for solutions together. That is the sector and the government can do better in publicity. And that should instill confidence in stakeholders in development of Northern Metropolis. We have also seen in paragraph 5 the government's arrangements for stage payment of land premium. I'm very happy to hear that the Development Bureau has been relaxing restrictions. I hope the administration can consider setting up some protection mechanism to make sure the land is developed according to plan and is being implemented according to a timeline. I think the existing arrangements of the government is good to prevent the hoarding of land and encourage expedited construction. Thank you, Chair. Undersecretary, thank you, Mr. Lau, for your comments. I believe it is good to have stage payment of land premium because it is a win-win situation for all. As for how we can ensure development can be implemented according to plan for land exchange, land sale, we actually have a building covenant that restricts basically the construction timeline so that sites would not be left idle. If they do not follow the building covenant, the government can issue a pecuniary penalty. I'm chairing the steering group on development control procedures, and I think the members' suggestions it's quite good. Once we have dealt with certain cases, it is probably good to share the experience so that in future stakeholders will know there are probably other solutions. Thank you. Any follow-up questions? If not, Mr. Yu Ming. Thank you, Chair. I welcome the Bureau's flexible land development strategies and the streamlining of control procedures. I think it is important to have these because we want to expedite the development of the Northern Metropolis. But I think with the streamlining of procedures, we should also have that for land compensation procedures. Before in the northeastern new territories with land resumption, after land has been resumed, compensation was not made for a very long time. And many landowners are smaller landowners that rely on the funds for retirement. They do not have much of a livelihood. So I ask for compensation to be made expeditiously. Apart from flexible land development, I think we should also have land resumption strategies. We have seen in the new territories before, for public works, the land is resumed perhaps at the two ends of the street for drainage works, but in the middle, it is left to a private developer. But then private developers would then have the incentive to block the ends of the streets in access. So we have seen this happen in the new territories before. I hope that development actually benefits the public, bringing convenience to the public. If it is making it less convenient for the public, I think it's not ideal. I hope the Bureau can conduct reviews to make sure stakeholders are benefiting from development. Undersecretary, thank you, Mr. Yu. The member's view is fair. We should expedite compensation as much as possible, but because we are dispersing public money, we need to really be prudent, for example, in the delineation of ownership to prevent undue losses made by the government. And at the end of 2024, we issued a Lands Department circular. If there's no confusion about the ownership, we do have a timeline for handling certain applications. And for simpler cases, we try not to go through litigation. We are working on this, but we also need to be prudent with public money. Sometimes, with what the member said about not the whole street being resumed, it was harder before, but with legislative amendments last year, we now have an objection mechanism. So if a landowner sees that land is being resumed but they are not included, they can object to it, and in the end, this will be considered by the Chief Executive in Council. Thank you. Ms. KWOK Fu-yung. Thank you, Chair. I want to ask questions in particular on streamlining control procedures. In general, when the sector has to submit large-scale land development projects, they have to liaise with different departments, Lands Department, Planning Department, and Buildings Department. The government has been talking about having interdepartmental coordination, but we have observed before there is room for improvement in transparency of communication between different departments. So I want to ask, in future, will there be an e-approval process management system so that stakeholders can follow up on the progress at different stages, say planning, lands, and buildings? There is a high-level intervention mechanism proposed, but I think it's not ideal that we rely only on the mechanism. Can we only in the long term make use of scientific data, and then when we need high-level intervention, that will be great. Let me declare an interest. A company under my name holds land in the Northern Metropolis. Mr. or the new territories. Undersecretary, I agree that we should have electronic surveillance, and we already have an electronic submission system of the buildings department that will let stakeholders be informed of progress. And I think developers personally will know whether they have submitted the necessary documents. And if they saw at the 8-week mark there is no response from the government at all, they can reach out to the Bureau. Before, the problem lies with there not being a clear timeline. Now we have one, so it should be easier, but we are moving towards digitalization. But what specifically we're going to do, we're looking into different options. Thank you. Mr. Tam, can you turn on the microphone, please? Thank you, Chair. I would like to say, first of all, I welcome the administration's launch of different measures to streamline procedures and control costs, reducing the time needed to turn primitive land into spade-ready sites, expediting redevelopment or development. The Bureau also issued a circular on streamlining procedures for large-scale private development projects, reducing the time needed for approval from 60 days to 45 days. I really appreciate this being handled in an expeditious manner. I want to ask, how will the Bureau instruct frontline officers to expedite handling of cases so that cases or applications are not only approved at the end of the performance pledge period, that is the 45-day mark? In the Northern Metropolis, we have 3 locations for large-scale land disposal, and we already started tendering for a particular location. I hope that we can have good market feedback. In April of last year, the Development Bureau invited expressions of interest for 3 locations for ecotourism. I want to ask about the latest progress of the 3 locations. For the 3 locations, one is in Jinbeicho and Park Noi in the Northern Metropolis. When will the relevant sites, or when will the relevant site be tendered? Undersecretary, we actually started streamlining our procedures early on. Starting from 2024, we already have a circular on how we have to be prudent. We need to ensure safety and quality, but we also need to have a facilitator mindset. And with the issuance of circular, it has enhanced awareness. And in the steering group that I chair, I ask for all approving departments, especially departments under the Development Bureau, all officers should learn about the idea in the circular. And with such delineation, it's not the end of it. We want to make sure officers understand the importance of the milestones. In general, building plans need 60 days to be approved. So with this being reduced to 45 days, it is a significant decrease. So please understand this. And we are also trying to pull market wisdom, and we will have more details later, and we will announce such in due course. Mr. Ehrenbach.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad that this paper is not just about Northern Metropolis, but also other parts of Hong Kong. I understand that you are relaxing barriers, and I hope that at the same time you're empowering the development of Hong Kong. I hope that you will be more flexible in granting land for leading enterprises. When you approve of their applications, please look into the long-term development of Hong Kong by offering them tax concessions. Don't worry too much about the WTO regulations because other parts of the world are doing the same thing. On SCT, I support the 777 arrangement, but for some enterprises such as cement works factory, maybe offer them a 10-10-10 arrangement. Because the setup of such factories is difficult and they have to obtain a large number of permits. And usually the lands department grant them only 5 years of tenancy. It's difficult for them. The facilitator culture, I support that. I think that we should encourage this. And we should explain to civil servants that we want to adopt this facilitator mindset to promote the development of our city. Don't be wary of the ICAC. Undersecretary, thank you. I thank you for your encouragement. You encourage our colleagues to adopt an innovative mindset and not be afraid of being misunderstood. Regarding your questions, in the 2025 policy address, the Chief Executive rolled out a series of policy packages. We offer concessions on land disposal, on tax for leading enterprises in areas that are in line with our development goals. For SDT of 777, we don't have a plan to expand it because if it's longer than that, then we are talking about a land lease. For land lease, land premium is payable. For 777, we're talking about a maximum duration of 21 years. The lease for gas stations is 21 years. So I think that we have exhausted our wiggle room. Thank you. Next, Ms. Julia Lau. Thank you, Chairman. I support the longer-term government tenancies. I think that the first tenancy should last 10 years instead of 7 years. There is a car repair workshops that spent 5 years on obtaining environmental permits. Ms. Lau, please don't code switch. It's difficult to translate. I was only speaking in English. After obtaining the EP, I have to spend 2 years on building the factory. So I have exhausted the first tenancy just to obtain the EP and build the premises. The initial investment is huge. So I think that we should adopt a 10+7+7 approach instead of 7+7+7. Second, on the development of the Northern Metropolis, well, in principle, I support the measures. I went to Santin and I asked the rural representatives what demands they have. They said that they lack public facilities and they don't have any parks for children. So I think that the government should further consult the area. And you should talk to the rural representatives what their demands and needs are. I know that the Undersecretary listened closely to people's views. There are villages in Santin that have not been included in the RDP, and I know that they are now being included. However, in the RDP that will be amended in the future, I don't see the villages being included. So it will be difficult for the villages to be connected with public sewage or water mains. And I wonder if you will set aside a sum to support cultural and arts projects. We may not need a dedicated fund for it, but as developers engage the community, they may in turn support these projects. If I may remind all of you, our meeting is not just among ourselves, but this meeting is public facing. The official used building covenant as well. Please avoid using jargons and make sure that the public understand what we're talking about. I'm sorry, I forgot the Chinese of the word building covenant. I will use Chinese next time. When we develop a northern metropolis, we hope that the traditional villages will benefit as well. We want to promote rural-urban integration. We have some measures in mind, and we will talk to you about it later. You suggested 10 plus 10 plus 10. Well, as I said, under the current arrangement, the SCT lasts 7 years only. Now, under the new arrangement of 7 plus 7, the tenant will have a greater certainty. You said that a workshop spent a long time on obtaining permits, and they can only start operating after a long period of time. Well, under the new arrangement, we want to encourage more industries to operate more conveniently. Thank you. That concludes this item. Now we move on to the next one. That's Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations for 2026-27. May I now invite the government officials to come in.
Oh.
Whenever we discuss Capital Works Reserve Fund, many officials from different departments would come, as we have a huge team of officials here. I will not introduce them one by one. Maybe I now ask the Deputy Secretary to brief us of the paper, and after that I will open the floor for questions. Thank you. I will make a brief presentation only in the interest of time. I'm glad to brief members on the estimated funding proposal required for the block allocation subheads under CWRF. There are 26 block allocation subheads, 23 are works related, and the 3 remaining are about computerization and land acquisition. The 2026-27, the total allocation will be $38.9299 billion. Some $20 billion are about land acquisition, and $700 million are about computerization, and the remaining will be for works related. Some 11,500 projects are work related. 1,600 are new projects. Under subhead 6100TX and the computerization project, they have been, the transport panel and the ITBP have been briefed and they have shown their support. The projects that we covered today come from 15 different departments and they are here to answer members' questions. We hope to have the support of the members here so that we can submit the funding proposal to PWSC in end February. Our goal is to have the funding approval from the Finance Committee on the 1st of April so that we can launch the over 10,000 projects in the block allocation. As this item involves funding approval in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, if members want to speak on items that they have direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak. There are 8 members nine who have pressed the button. I will read out their names. Mr. Chong Ho-fung, Mr. Chan Kok, Mr. Aaron Bok, Mr. Yu Ming, Mr. Lam Chen Sing, Mr. Vincent Cheng, Ms. Michelle Tang, Ms. Christine Fong, and Mr. Augustine Wong. Each member will have 4 minutes, including question and answer. Mr. Chong Ho-fung. Thank you, Chairman. I have a simple question. In 2026-27, we have a works-related project amounting to $16.1 billion. And now we're going to have $150 billion of work-related projects that account to about 10% of the total number of projects we have. I wonder if some of the government departments have broken up projects that amount to larger than $50 billion to circumvent our scrutiny. There's been such challenge from the community. For minor works projects, how many of them are within the range of $40 and $50 million? Please explain to us the details so that we can know if the government departments are deliberately breaking up larger projects into smaller ones to bypass scrutiny. Thank you. There are 21 subheads with less than $50 million of estimates. Only 0.8% of them are over $40 million, named that are 88 projects. So please rest assured that we have, the controlling officers process all the projects very prudently. Thank you. Next, Mr. Tam Chung Kok. Thank you, Chairman. 1100CA Item 9 is about redevelopment of Shuttlecock Control Point and associated works. The estimate is about $126 million. The estimate for 2026-27 is $19.47 million. Does it mean that we're going to redevelop the Shuttlecock Control Point this year? Do we have a timeline? When will it be commissioned? The redeveloped control point will be for passengers only, and 40,000 people can use it every day. Well, in page 63, which is about Newtown Development Consultancy, and there are some new projects that involve the Northern Metropolis. Say, for example, Lao Fao Shan, Tin Shui Wai, Poolside. I have questions regarding the Tinshui project. They will be developed into a ecotourism spot in 2026-27. Will the proposal be submitted to the Legislative Council, and when will the project start? Thank you.
唔該，主席。
Who is going to answer the question? Ms. Sabrina Law. Well, Mr. Tam's questions involve several departments. I will perhaps ask the representative of the Lands Department answer the question on 1100CA. I will then ask the RHSD representative to answer the question on the shuttlecock works. As for the riverine development to the southwest of Tinshui, I will ask perhaps the Architectural Services Department or the Lands Department representatives answer the questions. Thank you, Chair. On 1100CA for the compensation proposal, we expect that in 2026 and 27 we will start the compensation and land resumption procedures, but the timeline will depend on the work schedule of the relevant works departments. All right, RHSD representative, thank you. Regarding the redevelopment of the shuttlecock control point, we are currently conducting a small-scale investigation works, and in the beginning stage, we have consultant studies and different assessments being conducted. For example, heritage impact assessment, environmental impact assessment, traffic impact assessment, drainage, quantity surveying, as well as the preparation of tender documents. We also are doing investigation on trees and public facilities. We right now have the work scope of shuttlecock control point and the vicinity. The total area is close to 5.5 hectares. The scope of works would include demolishing the existing control point facilities and building the passenger clearance building as well as the clearance plaza. I want to ask, with transport facilities, that would include the transport interchange, right? Or are there other facilities? Thank you, Chair. Right now, under Head 703-13100GS, the RHSD is responsible for the investigation works. That is small-scale investigation works. Mr. Tam also asked about the developments at Laofaoshan and Tinshui. Who is going to answer the question? Is it the RHSD representative? If not, maybe the CEDD representative. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tam, for the question. If you're referring to the development at Laofaoshan South, it is approximately 57 hectares in size, close to Hachun. We will have residential development. We will also have government institution and community use facilities. We also will have the smart and green mass transport system in Hachun, new development area that we have to tie into. We expect to commence relevant works at the second part of 2026. And afterwards, we will apply for funding from the council to commence relevant works. Thank you. Mr. Aaron Bach, let me first declare an interest. I am a non-executive director for 2 architectural services firms. I'm also a director of a one-man consulting company. I note in the paper the budget is $38.9 billion. It is 6.8% lower than the year before. I believe it was mainly due to the decline in allocation for land resumption compensation. I want to ask if the budget can be allocated to works because the industry is hungry for jobs right now. I also note in 3004GX or 3101GX for the Architectural Services Department, there is a decrease of 21%. So that is close to $10 billion building works. So I want to ask, why is there such a significant decline? Is it possible to increase the budget? In 2021-22, it is $4.1 billion. Now it's just $3.1 billion, so $1 billion less. For the Highways Department, we often talk about how roads are uneven in surface. There are many complaints from the public. As I said before for age infrastructure, we should have in-depth repairs and maintenance. Right now, we only have a 5% allocation. That's not much. I would say for the $4.9 billion we save, we should allocate at least some of it to road works. The sector expects $20 to $30 million in minor works projects in the next 2 or 3 years to be commenced, but then I do not see that in the paper. Where did that go? So I want to ask also, it is not a commitment. You want to make sure you are actually spending money that will benefit the sector. There is a cap of $50 million. We want more works projects to be done, and we want them to be of greater scale. Is it possible for you to increase the limit? I also want to remind Mr. Aaron Bok that you shouldn't mix Chinese and English in your comments. I note that. Thank you. What are questions on the overall expenditure and expenditure of specific departments? Who is going to answer the relevant questions? I will give an answer for the first and the last question, and then I'll ask the relevant departmental representatives to answer the other questions. Mr. Bok should note that for works projects, we have $16.2 billion allocated compared to $14.4 billion last year. It is a 12.3% increase. In the past 2 years, we have a figure roughly at $14 billion. So for the next year, that figure is already quite a significant increase from before. The chief executive also said in the last policy address, to support the local construction industry in the next 2 or 3 years. An additional $30 billion in expenditure will be allocated to public works. But then it's not just for block allocations, it's for public works in general. And we have in total 12.3% in block allocations for public works, as I said earlier. As for whether we should increase the cap from $50 million to $100 million, for example, we actually just made an adjustment a few years ago. Before we made the adjustment, the cap was $30 million. And when I answered Mr. Chong's questions, I mentioned this. Right now, we only have really not many projects that are in the range of $40 to $50 million, so we do not see the need to adjust the cap right now. I will first ask the Architectural Services Department and then the Highways Department representatives to answer relevant questions, perhaps also the CEDD representative as well. Thank you. For Head 703-304GX, the total allocation for last year is $2.411 million in 2025-2026. This year it's $1.9 billion. And for another subhead, we have a total allocation of $1.389 billion. It has decreased to this year for the allocation $1.097 billion. As Mr. Bok said, we have a total allocation decrease from $3.9 billion to $3.1 billion. There is a decrease in the allocation because for the ongoing items and the proposed new items, we do not need as much allocation as before. The Architectural Services Department has all along practiced stringent stringent management of projects to make sure all of the projects are needed by citizens and respond to the demands of society. We will continue to practice stringent cost controls, and we will consider different factors in determining the priorities for works projects. And with consideration of different factors, we have determined the relevant allocation. Chair, they did not answer my question. I asked why there is a decrease in the allocation, and I heard from the sector that there are some projects that have been tendered, but they have been cancelled. I think there are justifications that make it right for you to conduct a tendering exercise in the first place. Mr. Bok, please. Mr. Chan, can you explain this? For works projects submitted by departments, we will consider different factors, including departmental justifications, what existing condition of the building is it safe, what is the project scope. We will refer to previous projects to see if the project are reasonable to take forward. So for relevant subheads, we have the specific projects. Mr. Bok talked about some projects being cancelled. I don't have relevant information, so I can't tell what is being asked. I won't allow for direct communication between members and representatives from departments. If you want to follow up on the relevant items, please follow up on these after the meeting. I also have other departmental representatives that will be answering the relevant questions of the member. I believe 7100 CX, we will be adding 5% in allocation. You said it's not enough, right? Yes, Highways Department representative. We're applying for an allocation of $2.266 billion. It is 5.9% increase from before. While there is an increase, we do understand the members' concern that some citizens are concerned about the age of certain infrastructure, whether we will need major repairs. However, major repairs will be restricted by needs for transportation facilities, which is why we've been looking for ways to compress the works timeline, and we do see some good results so far. We are actually making preparations, and we have a plan next year to apply for funding for major repairs once we have the good results applied. Thank you. Mr. Yuming. Thank you, Chair. I want to ask about for head 7099100WX. It talked about for the IRD allocation, there is a year-on-year increase of 94.14%, for the Water Supplies Department for water supplies improvement works. So I want to ask, will these works be undertaken in black spots such as Kuntong and Tuen Mun with more extreme weather conditions? Will we prioritize the hotspots for flooding? I also want to ask about HUD 705510BX. We talked about some landslip prevention program measures. We have a hilly terrain in Hong Kong, and we can't really fix every slope. For unpopulated areas, can we just make use of innovative technologies to issue warnings so that we can assess the relevant risks instead of relying on works to fix everything?
Waterworks. Well, Water Supplies Department and then CEDD, please. Thank you. We have adopted a risk-based management system. $700 million to $1.2 billion are going to be spent, and that's to meet public expectation. We are allocating resources to implement a risk-based approach to focus on water mains that are at high risk of bursting. Regarding the risk-based management system, we have regard to the age, the materials, and the leaking history, surrounding environment of water mains to assess the risk of bursting of certain water mains. We will prioritize water mains of high risk and replace them or repair them to reduce the risk of bursting. The bursting of water pipes happen not in certain particular districts. After years of effort, the number of cases have dropped from 2,000 to only 20 in 2025. Leaking of water pipes have decreased from 25% to 18% in 2025. And the bursting of water mains, the cases of such have reduced in 2025. We understand that the bursting of water mains affect the people. We will try our best to minimize it. CEDD, please. Regarding Mr. Yu's questions on landslip prevention program, this is an ongoing effort. We adopt a risk-based approach to identify the landslip that we have to work on. We look at what impact will be caused if there is landslip on a particular slope. Say if the slope is near a hospital, school, or residential area, we accord a higher priority to that particular slope because the risk of it is higher if landslip happen. And if the slope is next to major trunk roads, that if landslip happens to that slope, then that will affect the commute of the people. We adopt a risk-based approach by prioritizing slopes with higher risks. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, the Deputy Secretary explained that the allocation is higher this year and the government accorded an extra $30 billion on works project. There are some projects, say for example waterworks, drainage, see a higher rate of increase in allocation. For head 703, under there are subheads about small-scale premises, say for example joint use building, redevelopment of parks, that see a reduce in proposed allocation. We see fewer and fewer projects in the public works industry, and I hope that the government will spend more money on it. The administration say very often that they are dedicating more resources on implementing works projects, but some workers say that they have not been benefited from such an extra allocation. And I see that some subheads are subject to a decreased allocation. I hope that more workers will be able to benefit from the extra commitment of the government. Small-scale facilities are equally important to the community. I'd like to ask about Head 710. There is a cost control computer systems that requires some $10 million to develop. Well, I'd like to ask about the functions of such system. Can we actually collect data for analysis so that we can control cost better? What is the purpose of such a system? Can the analysis be used in other projects to lower cost? Thank you. Thank you for the question. On the rate of increase of various subheads and how it's uneven, well, we try to spend our resources on areas that are more worth it, and much of the allocation are on ongoing projects. We have some 9,900 ongoing projects. Depending on the cash flow, it will affect our estimates in 2026-27. So we cannot have a standardized rate of increase for all projects. As I said, the waterworks and drainage will see a higher increase in allocation. The member asked about the computerization scheme. As I said, the relevant departments and bureaus have briefed the ITBP on their projects. That's why they don't have representatives here. We will relay your questions to the DPO so they give you a written reply. Thank you. Any follow-up questions? No. Next, Mr. Vincent Cheng. Thank you, Chairman. I have 3 questions. First, I'd like to ask about 703 head, about Kwun Chung Sports Center. In 2022 policy address, the project was proposed. 3 years have passed. The cumulative expenditure is $0. I would like to ask about the progress. Many people want to revitalize traditional markets. What is the problem? Second, on the Tongchao Street market under head 703, again, the expenditure is 0. Why are we not seeing any progress? Third, on the West Kowloon Cultural District, minor works on pedestrian walkway. That's a walkway between Tai Kok Tsui and Palace Museum. I see that the construction is underway. I'd like to ask about the progress. People there are complaining about the dim lighting at the walkway. Is there any room for improvement? Thank you. The 2 markets in 703 and a walkway. Well, the first 2 questions will be answered by the RHSD. The third question, which project are we talking about? CEDD? I'm talking about page 54. Well, the third question, I will ask the CED to answer it. RHSD, Mr. Chan, please. On the Kwun Chung Market, Urban Sports Center, that's not under the market modernization program. We have set aside $2 billion on a 10-year market modernization program. We're working with the department on, well, I'm not talking about redeveloping of market. I'm talking about 705, item 5, this urban sports center at Kwun Chung Municipal Services Building. It's been abandoned for quite some time, and in 2022 policy address, it is said that the market will be turned into an urban sports center. However, there is no progress so far. The same goes for the one in Sham Shui Po. This is not under 3004GX. That's under 3100GX, the provision of a urban sports center. Now we are conducting a minor investigative works. We are conducting surveying, traffic impact assessment, and preparing tender documents. Minor investigative works include site surveying, structural and building services investigation, establishing a building information model. The works will turn part of the Kunchong market into an urban sports center. The site is of some 8,113 square meters. In fourth quarter 2027, the design will be completed, and in 2028, we will invite tender. The meaning behind 0% is because the construction is not underway yet. Am I right? Yes. The fund was granted on the 28th of November 2025 for investigative works. Cash flow will only happen after it. The same goes for the Sam Shui Po temporary market. Mr. Chan, can you give us the reference number? I'm talking about page 173101GX. There are over some 10,000 projects. Please give us the number. Do you have it? If not, maybe I will ask the CEDD to answer the question first. Thank you for question. The pedestrian walkway between Takoche and WCD, there is a cargo working area between it. That's why it's not connected, and that's why we want to build a pedestrian walkway between them. Works is commencing in phases, but before that, we have to set back the boundary of the cargo working area, and we are subject to some regulations. And the setback happened in 2022. The works is underway. We expect that within this year, the walkway will be commissioned. The width of the walkway will be 14 meters. The narrow parts of the walkway will be of only 2 to 3 meters. But we believe that the walkway will offer a convenient passage for the people there. What about the Sam Shui Po Tung Chau Street temporary market project? Well, the site cover contractors introducing restaurants. They're building multi-purpose areas for different activities such as exhibition, and when it's not used, it can be serving as an exchange space for store owners. On the first quarter of 2026, the works will start, and in the third quarter, it will be completed. Thank you. I may have to extend the meeting by 15 minutes if you all agree. Next, Miss Michelle Tang. Thank you. I support the block allocation because that can save us administrative work and speed up construction. We have technical feasibility study and detailed design works. These are necessary before we commence any works. For district level works, they are of diverse nature. Many of them have to do with people's livelihood. But I'd like to ask what the justifications are behind these minor works. Was the idea from, say, the people or the district council members? How can these proposals or ideas be submitted to the government? These are my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Sabrina Law. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Michelle Tang, for your questions. I will give a brief response. For different departments, when they propose new items and whether we'll include them in block allocations, we will consider different factors and we will determine the priority of different projects based on factors considered. We have many channels to receive proposals on minor works. We have district councils. For example, many public works departments will regularly attend meetings of district councils. When there are specific projects that will cause an impact on district residents, they will consult district councils. So I believe district councils would be the main channel for proposals to be made and which projects that needs expedited processing. Thank you. Any follow-up questions? None? Thank you. Ms. Christine Fong. Right now, the Bureau is asking for a block allocation for $38.9 billion for the Capital Works Reserve Fund. I have many questions because there are many projects. For example, for land acquisition, it is expected to have an allocation of $19.9 billion. And there are some works projects that would have significant allocations. I hope that the expenditure will be accountable. Can the Bureau elaborate on when there is anything left over, what will happen? I also want to ask about page 18. We have an emergency response team at the Fire and Ambulance Academy that would cost $37 million. I want to ask more about it. I also want to ask about page 22 in the paper in Chinese about a Ma Onshan sewerage facilities that would cost $62 million. Ms. Christine Fong, if you're talking about specific projects, can you talk about the numbers of the specific projects? For the drainage project, it is head 704-14100GX. And we have another project for 703-31041GX item 2. Also note for another project for drainage works or rainwater or sewerage works. I hope that when there are works of large scale, we can have more detailed information for public access. Sometimes district councils may not even have such information. I also note for the Sai Kung campsite, you will be spending $29.8 million. This is under item 705, 5001BX. I want to also ask, when you determine the order of projects, how will you determine what kind of improvement it will bring and in turn the order? Also note for item 7, there is the training and exhibition facilities for Eco Park. It is $25 million. There are also some landslip prevention measures on page 28 of the paper. That is $212 million. And I want to ask whether there are other projects for Saisha that will be included under the scope. So basically, questions on heads 703, 704, and 705. I already recorded the members' questions. I will ask the RHSD Drainage Services Department, and then we will have the EPD representatives answer the relevant questions. Thank you. For head 703-3101GX about the Emergency Response Team for Fire and Ambulance Academy. We have in East Kowloon many different infrastructure projects being completed. Kai-tak Sports Park, the hospital, the youth hostel. So there is great demand for emergency rescue services, which is why we need to, on top of the Kai-tak team, we need to deploy officers of the disaster response and rescue team to the academy. It would be about constructing some warehouses, meeting rooms, as well as the air conditioning system. We hope that the works can commence in Q2 of this year and completed in Q2 of 2028. Thank you. EPD representative. Is it Mr. Lee who will answer the questions? Thank you. For 5101 DX about the Eco Park project. It is about converting it to a training center for sustainable development for Belt and Road countries, basically providing training to Belt and Road countries personnel. It is expected to be completed in Q4 of this year. All right, who is going to answer questions now? CEDD representative. Thank you, Ms. Christine Fong, for your questions. For 5001BX on landslip prevention programs, we talked about this being page 28 in the Chinese paper, item 2. For slope works in Sai-Kung, we do not have specific information what works we're doing on each slope, but basically for each man-made slope, for the improvement works, as Ms. Christine Fong said, we will perhaps cut slopes or even construct retaining walls. It would depend on the circumstances of each slope to see what works are needed. It would be on a case-by-case basis. Ms. Christine Fong asked about whether we would have specific projects or works done in Saisha. I would say for our department on our website, we have a dedicated website on slope safety, and we would include the slopes that need to have works done, the relevant information on the website. So if Ms. Christine Fong wants to look up for a particular slope, whether it is included in the landslip prevention program, one can access the relevant information on the website and which contract it is under, and you can look up the details. All right, Mr. Augustine Wang. First, I would like to declare an interest. I am the Deputy Chairman of the Board of Directors of Lingnan University. Also, the company I serve has land that is probably going to be acquired. I want to ask about 7033100GX, a new item number 4 about enhancement of room data management, a consultant study on this. What specifically are you studying? I also agree with what other members said about the construction sector not having enough work. The under head 703 buildings, we have a 21% decrease in allocation. In the past 5 years, we have figures ranging from $3.9 to $4 billion. We only have $3.1 billion this year. This is a significant cut having regard to the figures in the last 5 years. For building works, it is especially beneficial to have such works because it can benefit many contractors. So I want to ask if the cut has to be so significant. I do understand why there has to be a significant increase in the allocation for water works, but then a 21% decrease in the allocation for buildings is a significant cut. So I hope the government can reconsider this and increase allocation for buildings? Thank you. Both questions will be answered by the Architectural Services Department representative. Thank you, Mr. Chen. With the room data management, we are asking for a consultant study to be done because right now with room data management there are many challenges with, say, the complexity of input, and we do not have the adequate data analysis capabilities for room data. It has really hurt design and project management of public works. The Development Bureau has been actively working to digitalize public works, and we have determined that BIM is a core of digitalization of works. We're also exploring the use of AI and other technologies to enhance building efficiency. So we hope that through this study, we can look into how we can make use of digital technologies to enhance input and management of room data, to enhance accuracy, standardization, of such data, so as to expedite project planning of public works and enhance efficiency and cost effectiveness. As for the other question, the second question is on 7703 in general, why there is a significant cut for the allocation this coming year. Well, I think in general, departments will review how much cash flow they need and how many new items they have to undertake. I will see if the RHSD representative have anything to add. The Architectural Services Department is responsible for taking care of and repairing over 8,000 buildings, government offices, quarters, municipal services buildings, etc. Before each works project is undertaken, we will review the proposal submitted by departments, and we will review the building condition to see if we need to have full-on refurbishment or do we only need improvement works. So it would really be dependent on what works are being undertaken next year that we have our allocation. Does it answer your question, Mr. Wong? Well, having heard the reply given by the RHSC representative, I still don't really understand what the study is about. What do you mean by making use of technology or AI for room data? What specifically is it about? Also, with such a significant cut in the number of works projects, in the past 5 years, we have had figures ranging from $3.9 to $4 billion, but we have a significant cut this year, $3.1 billion. I understand why the government is being prudent with public money, but I want to know why there is a significant cut in 21%. I think for the first question, I think with the room data, you need to be really clear what it is about, because if you don't answer this, I will ask this anyway. This is a new term. I also want to have Ms. Sabrina Law to answer some of the questions on policy-related considerations. The Architectural Services Department representative said repeatedly some of the considerations, but I think since many members asked, with such a significant cut with the labor sector or the professional sector, they are worried about this significant cut causing a significant decrease in work available for the relevant sectors. Mr. Chen, let me first talk about room data. It is in English ERDS, that is the input process. We can make use of AI and AI analyses to change or delete or consolidate room data so as to lower the time needed for preparation of tender documents for departments and works departments. I think you first have to explain what room data means. Sorry to interrupt. Well, room data is basically data that we have to enter to formulate operational requirements of departments. We need such data to make analyses to determine the project design and our project management milestones. I don't know what room means. I'm not sure if Mr. Wong wants to ask. I think as architects or surveyors, we don't really understand what it means. Can they provide information on what they are specifically studying, what room data means, and how this is relevant to their design? I will perhaps ask a development bureau representative to answer this question.
Let me explain it in simple terms. When we design a public works project, we ask the user department to tell us what they need in a room. Say, for example, how large the room should be, how many sockets they need, for example. As my colleague said, we have in electronic room data sheets. The departments have to enter all the information and data into the system for the HSD to design the premises. However, in the process, there are often errors. Now we want to make use of artificial intelligence to make the entire process more accurate and more speedy. And this save us time and make the entire process more efficient. That's our goal. If I may remind you, as you come from professional background, you may be familiar with the jargons. However, we need to make sure that the public understand what you're talking about. And it's the things is even worse when Legislative Council members from professional industry don't understand what you're talking about. Deputy Secretary. On the proposed funding for HSD and the reduction of 21%, what is our consideration? Well, there are 26 subheads altogether. They come from different departments. They look at their ongoing projects and how much cash flow is needed for them. They also look at what new projects they have and the estimated cash flow for the coming year. It's difficult for us to ensure a consistent increase over the years for all heads and subheads. Although there is a decrease of 21% for the heads under buildings department, waterworks and drainage see an increase of 42 and 94%. For Education Bureau and Social Welfare Department, there's an increase of 17% regarding their allocations. There are subheads that see a decrease in their estimates because they may need as much cash flow next year. The departments apply for funding according to their cash flow needs. The Deputy Secretary has given their explanation. If you have any suggestions regarding buildings work, you can propose it after the budget is delivered. I have a simple question before Ms. Christine Fong put her question. Under 709 Waterworks, there is a substantial increase in the allocation this year. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a question. I wonder if any new technology has been adopted to enhance asset management efficiency. After such a substantial commitment, are we going to save energy? Yes. We have many reservoirs, water filtering stations. They are under. Well, these water treatment works will have to be upgraded. For Taipo water treatment works is of 50 years old. We have introduced technology to make it smarter to save manpower. We also adopt a district management approach. In a large water treatment work, we may manage smaller and more remote water treatment works there, making use of technology. And we are looking into extending our smart management to more works. That is the Water Intelligent Network 2.0. We want to establish models such that without too many sensors, we can make use of computer models to monitor the water pressure and the pipe networks. We have I/O, Internet of Things Network. We also have artificial intelligence technology so that we can receive alerts more early to act. I will extend the meeting by 10 minutes so that Ms. Fong can ask her follow-up questions. Thank you. Chairman, you've asked about the Works Intelligent Network and the development of pipe robotics, $17 million. Well, there's a $20 million that are going to be spent on the feasibility study of seawater and network. I'd like to have more details of the projects. I'm not here to object to your proposals, but I want more details from the departments. For, say, primary school improvement works, 708, a lift costs $37 million. Some schools redevelopment project costs some $19 million. I know that some schools are older. We have to spend more to improve it. I have another concern. That's a transport department system, 710. A centralized platform for journey recorder of taxis. Can the data be shared to other platforms? I support the development of these platforms, but I don't have any details. If we are to support the allocation of $38 billion, I need more information. Thank you. Can you supply the information to Ms. Fong after the meeting? I will ask the relevant departments to supply Ms. Fong with the relevant information. 709, 708. Maybe I'll ask the relevant departments to answer your question on the computerization project 710. We've discussed it in the ITBP meeting this morning. That's why we don't have any colleagues from DPO today. After the meeting, we will relay Ms. Fong's questions to the DPO so that they will give you a written reply. The Water Supplies Department and the Education Bureau, please. Thank you. Mr. Chan. Let me talk about the pipeline robotic joint laboratory. Well, the water mains are pressured and they are now underground. Now, we want to create a underground pipeline to inspect the conditions of underground water mains. According to experience in other countries, the cost is substantial. In Hong Kong, many water mains are underground and it's very complicated. We are now working with the polytechnic universities and other consultancy firms to look into how we can establish this pipeline robotic in Hong Kong. The robotics may also collect sound information. Now we're working with the Polytechnic University on the consultancy study. We have a laboratory ourselves. It was used to detect water flow, and now we want to also inspect the conditions of water mains. Now on to the other question that you mentioned, that is the feasibility study for smart salt water supply system. We have a SIN on fresh water, but not for salt water yet. The pressure of saltwater supply system is high, especially for those near the ocean, and salt water, after being pumped to the destination, can be used directly. Now we want to reduce the pressure of these saltwater supply systems so that the risk of bursting is reduced. We are now looking into new technology to reduce the risk of bursting of water mains and make our water supply system more smart. The Education Bureau, please. Thank you for your questions. Under 8100QX 8C, 7 out of 10 are lift projects. In the 2018 policy address, it is said that we are going to install lifts in schools without one. The reason why the cost of different lift installation projects vary is because we tailor the design of the lift to different schools. Well, for the school in Hollywood Road, the lift installation is more expensive. That's because we have to put in place temporary facilities to transport the materials, and the piles or the pillars have to go deeper. That's why the cost is higher. For some schools, they may need 2 lifts or even 3 lifts. That also affect the cost. If there's no other questions, well, do we all support the submission of such funding proposals to the PWSC for consideration? We all agree to it. Now we conclude the discussion. Thank you for coming to the meeting. Next item, any other business? There being no AOB, meeting adjourned. Thank you.